approval and amendment of meeting agenda items.
Yes, we have an addition to consent agenda of 9.6, certified staff resolution.
I'll move that we amend the agenda for October 24th, 2018, adding like item 9.16 to consent.
It's moved and seconded to approve the agenda as amended for October 24th. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Motion carried. Okay, approval of minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes for October 10th, 2018 as presented.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for October 10th, 2018. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Number 4, correspondence. Number 5, public comment. Seeing none. 6.1, first and second grade pumpkin presentation.
Mrs. Warner, are you out there in the crowd someplace? Mrs. Shine, are you in the crowd someplace?
Mrs. Stein,
Somebody.
is your turn yet?
There you are. Very, very pleased to welcome Mrs. Shine, and she has brought this wonderful audience here this evening, and it's always wonderful to share these student activities with the board, so I'm going to quit talking and turn over to Mrs. Shine.
All right, we've been studying a pumpkin unit, and so we learned all sorts of things. We have all sorts of things, but the first thing that we learned is the life cycle of the pumpkin. And so they have, plus their hats to show you, they have a song that they sing with it. Ready, guys?
Pumpkins grow, pumpkins grow, pumpkins grow. Do you know how pumpkins grow in my garden? First I plant some pumpkin seeds, pumpkin seeds, pumpkin seeds. First I plant some pumpkin seeds in my garden. Then the seed grows a sprout, grows a sprout, grows a sprout. Then the seed grows a sprout in my garden. Then the vine leaves will grow, they will grow, they will grow. Then the vine leaves will grow in my garden. Then flowers grow on the vine, on the vine, on the vine. Then flowers grow on the vine in my garden. Then green pumpkins start to grow, start to grow, start to grow. Then green pumpkins start to grow in my garden. At last the pump turns orange all around, orange all around, orange all around. At last the pump turns orange all around in my garden. Now we know how pumpkins grow, pumpkins grow, pumpkins grow. Now we know how pumpkins grow in my garden.
Good job. So you can see some of the things that we did. One of the things we did was, of course, they had to name their pumpkin, which was the most fun, I think, of the whole week. We weighed our pumpkin. We measured our pumpkins, how tall, how big around, what shape they were, the number of ribs on their pumpkin, and their pumpkin seeds. Now, part of this is they had to count, of course, the standard asked them to count to 120. Some of them had way more seeds than that, so they did a good job. And they even went back and checked themselves by putting them in groups of 10 and then counting them by 10 to make sure that they had the right numbers. We also started some double-digit addition, which with these numbers, and they caught on like this, so I'm expecting them to zoom on. And we did a lot of comparing and contrasting, didn't we? Who remembers who had the most seeds? Whose pumpkin had the most seeds? Whose was it? Who had 400 and something? Are they here? Oh, Austin and Brooklyn. They had the most counting to do. And who had the least amount of seeds to count? Do you remember? Wasn't it Levi and Macy? They aren't here, are they? So, we've been doing lots of things, lots of math, lots of writing, and things around that. And now we're just going to end with, does anybody have any questions for them? They've learned a lot. We cooked pumpkins. We've made some treats for you guys out here. So, you guys ready for your pumpkin carols now? Ready? We're going to do Up in the Pumpkin Patch. Ready? 1, 2, 3. Is that me? I don't know what it's doing. Is that me? Usually it sings to me, but that's... Okay, ready? Up in the pumpkin patch. 1, 2, 3.
Up in the pumpkin patch, witch's paws, out jumps the great one, hear the applause. Down through the rows with goodies and toys, all for the followers, Halloween joys. Haunt, 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 who wouldn't want? Haunt, 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 who wouldn't want to be in a pumpkin patch? Cheer, 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 waiting for the white one and be sincere.
Excellent. Ready? Pumpkin bells. 1, 2, 3.
Dashing through the streets in our costumes bright and gay, to each house we go, laughing all the way. Ha ha ha, Halloween is here, making spirits bright. What fun it is to trick or treat and sing pumpkins tonight.
Good job. Coordinators have a list of the standards that we've covered and also some of the activities that we've done. So to make those standards work. So it was fun pumpkining, but we still were following the standards and getting the education that we need too.
Where did you guys get your pumpkins from? Did you go to a patch or?
No, Mrs. Shine bought them because what kind of pumpkins did I buy?
Sugar pumpkins.
And why did we buy sugar pumpkins?
Because they're better to cook with.
Yes, and so we had to cook with them, so.
So you
Yeah.
recycled them down.
We still have some pumpkin pulp if anybody needs them.
They get a treat going home. The pumpkin bread they cook themselves.
So, come on guys, let's go. Say thank you.
Is that your sister?
Thank you folks for coming.
That's it.
Good to see everybody.
Get out of here. We'll see you.
See you later.
Mr. Rose,
Let's wait and press that side.
Good, how are you? I'd rather see you guys than not. Thank you guys for bringing
Miss Shine wanted me to tell you guys that there just wasn't enough for everybody that was just here, but they did make pumpkin treats for you that are out on our little treat table. They even used the pumpkin puree that puree that she was talking about, the sugared pumpkin. The frosting is homemade. It's pretty nice spread. So help yourselves really quickly if you'd like to have a treat first and then proceed.
Is it cute? I told her she was the one making this.
Hey, good to go.
I watched this lesson. Well, I am still kind of going over the chart here with Michigan. Shh, start. Yeah, all right.
Okay, 6.2, OSBA regional meeting.
Janet, Barry, and I attended it a week ago tonight. Reasonably informative. I think it was a lot shorter than it traditionally is because the legislative session, of course, hasn't started yet. And once that gets going, that's usually the meat of the presentation as far as what's going to happen during the state legislature. The big thing they did was poll the audience, which consisted of administrators and board members, basically on two things. Number one, from our mind's eye and our perspective, what do we think is, they put in a bunch of series of questions with kind of a clicker thing where I sent it to the computer. Numerous questions on generating revenue. One of them that I found interesting, and I'll let Janet chime in, was as far as the taxation thing, the possibility of taxes. And they had, the two that I remember that stood out that were voted on the most by the crowd were, number one response was corporate tax as an answer, number two response was sales tax as an answer. So, it was the crowd there, they're primarily ranchers. Ranchers are corporations, and I just found it interesting that would be the number one response. The sales tax, I've been doing this thing for 25 years, going to it all this time. I think in the years that I've been doing this, we do these polls about every 2 years to find out what we're thinking. The sales tax notion, time and time again by the crowd was like, no and absolutely not. But the last two OSBA meetings I've been to in Paisley, I'm seeing kind of the attitude change on that the crowd is more favorable to the possibility of a sales tax. I think if there's one put forward, it'd really have to be defined as far as, the percent of taxation and everything else. So I think that would be the critical thing to it. So, do you have anything to contribute on that?
The only thing that that really sparked me was that, it's a new biennium for next year. So 18, 19, 19, 20 is the new biennium. And so they're obviously already talking numbers. Lori was very adamant about, we come in as a school district at 8.7 billion, whereas, or excuse me, backwards, sorry, that the legislature and that comes in at 8.7 billion. We're coming in more like 9.19 billion. And so, and really honestly, we would like it to be the quality education model, which is more like 10 million, or 10 billion, excuse me. And so, they did come to not an agreement, but an already preconceived notion that 9 billion, 9.1 was probably more of a combined juncture. So it was actually more positive than what we've had in the past, where it's been very low-balled versus very high, and it takes forever to get to that center. But so I was really impressed to hear that, actually. And they feel like, at the 9 billion, at least we have a good start, rather than prior years. So I was really impressed with that, with those talks. And then the other thing was they did touch on the Forecast 5, with which we discussed last time, where I seek the approval for the purchase. And it was interesting because there was a little known fact that I knew that OSBA and OASBO had put in money for that, so that we could share in that responsibility as far as dollar figures. And so I was interested to know that it was 500,000 that was ponied up for that. So that's quite a chunk of change that OASBO and OSBA put forth. So I was pleased, and I feel even more confident with our purchase on that.
As far as upcoming legislative things, I think the thing that would be interesting, this that got my attention, I believe the teachers' unions have gone and advocated for a negotiated language as far as adding language in regard to class sizes in the CBAs. That is something that the legislature will be taking up again, making it a mandatory bargaining piece of language to do those things. So OSBA's position is, for the time being, the cost it would take to make that happen. OSBA is going to continue to be against it and not support it as far as the class size thing in bargaining language. In addition, she discussed the statewide elections. They didn't really take a position on the governor's race. They did talk about all the ballot measures in brief, because the ballot measures, none of them really are tied to schools, with the exception of 104, the revenue one, which basically a vote on it is 3/5 supermajority, before any taxes are approved. In this particular thing, that takes in not only taxes, but fees, DMV fees and things like that, supermajority to approve those revenue sources too. So that's what a yes vote means on that. So as far as any correlation to schools, yes, the revenue piece is always critical, but the rest of these, I'm sure you've been hearing and done to death with them on TV, 103, 105, and 106. So, unless you have questions, I am not going to cover those. What else? I think that was kind of the long and short of it. It was an excellent dinner and a very short presentation. So, anything else that I left out?
No, the only other thing that she did say was that the two candidates for governor, Pete and Newt, are neck and neck right at the moment. Interesting.
That's my report, or our report.
Thank you. Any more questions? Okay, 6.3, financial statements report for year-end 17-18.
So I compiled a year-end report. This is going to probably change. I have not done the auditor's journal entries, nor have I gotten them yet, but we're pretty close. So this could change a little bit, but I don't see a big drastic change. The only thing that I can say is we did have a really good audit report coming back from them. There was a couple of things that showed up on the audit report that we've actually clarified for them. She's working with a whole new team this year, so her struggle was probably as real as our struggle is learning new software. So, but it actually went well. The only thing, there was a couple things that will stay for sure. And these things have been talked over and rectified, if you will, for the incoming 18-19 year. We did have a over budget situation in Fund 240 of about $33,000. Now the big thing about that is roughly $20,000 to $21,000 of that is our commodities. Well, in the past we've never been that high on the commodities, and so we've never actually put them in, and honestly we never put them in on our side, but the auditors put it in for financial statement purposes because they have to. For the way that they do a modified accrual or cash basis, it's in and out, and basically commodities come to us. We're allotted X amount of dollars worth of commodities. So we were not really writing out a check for those commodities. We order up that amount of dollar figure and they get here during months of the year. So we're gonna have that situation, which the change in that from prior years is we've never utilized the whole commodities pot. So this year that posed us a problem that I didn't catch, and what that is 20 to 21,000 because of the fresh fruits and vegetables that we acquired, plus the regular amount of commodities. Usually we're around 12, 13,000 roughly. So that was actually a good catch on their part, and so we'll rectify that for the incoming 18-19 year as well as moving forward, because we have continued maximizing that 20 to 21,000. $1,000. So there's that piece, and then there was a little bit, and it was scattered from the remainder of that, the roughly 11 to 12,000. It was scattered. It wasn't one specific thing. It wasn't salaries. It wasn't consumables or anything like that. It was pretty scattered out there. So, so we'll take a look back at that for 18-19 and adjust that, so we don't run into that budget violation again for this year. The other thing was signatures on time cards. That's usually a good struggle. It has went down from prior years, and we do catch them sooner. However, there was enough to make note. And then the next thing was down in the schools, the ASB funds, the bank recs were not reviewed by either the principals or another party that didn't reconcile those. And so that's just attributed to new staff, really. So that's been rectified, not worried about that, but it will be for sure on our letter. So with that, these are tentative numbers, but we'll be pretty close as far as ending fund balance and going forward. So, and then I'll bring that report back to you as soon as we make those journal entries and they become final, obviously, and that'll be a brief report. Just to review really quickly, ending the year in the revenue department, we projected $236,000. We actually collected $149,000. The biggest part in that is our tuition. We had a large tuition payment in July from MODOC, which we have quite a few kids that come from MODOC up to here, and so that's usually a pretty big check. That's one thing, and then our federal money consisted of actuals of Title I grants and the Perkins dollars that we collected at the end of the year. But in the prior years, estimate of $75,000, we had collected a couple of years of Title I dollars. So that skewed it a little bit. As far as taxes is concerned, we collected more than we anticipated, and interest and fees off of those taxes was also more than we anticipated. The interest that we have with the LGIP is skyrocketed, which is not a bad thing. We collected about $4,600, where the past years we estimated $1,500. So it's a large factor. We did do a forfeiture at the end of the year for Section 125, some people that had moved on during the year. It was roughly around $12,000. And of course, those other dollars are from the ESD, mentor dollars, special education teacher reimbursement, and enrichment funds get paid out usually at the end of the year. Let's see, that's about the long and the short of that. Moving on to expenditures, those are pretty darn close to what we anticipated, just a little bit under. So that is no shock to me. Ending fund balance, $1,393,000 is where we are sitting right now. This could again change a little bit, and of course, I had anticipated much less than that, $1,110,000. So, and I think I budgeted for a beginning fund balance of about $900,000. So, felt pretty good about that as far as at the end of the year. So, it could change. I don't expect it to have a huge drastic change after auditors' journal entries. Any questions?
The ending fund balance being much higher than what we had anticipated, and our current budget being built upon what the projected ending fund balance, will the current budget be changed to account for the increase in fund balance?
Yeah, so we have several things that are going to happen. We're going to end up with another supplemental budget this year. And I wanted to wait till I got those journal entries, obviously, to make that number solid. But there's several things that happened here. One, that's going to cause that, this beginning fund balance. One, and then there's, I think we added on some teachers because we knew this number was happening. So I think we added 2 teachers and maybe 3 paraprofessionals. I might be totally skewed on that. Is that right?
Just at the elementary?
No.
Overall?
Overall. I think that's right. So we have that budget out there that is lower but need to go back and fix it. We need to adjust for those hires that we made mid-year, or midsummer, and that sort of thing. So this will actually get consumed once I do that supplemental.
So what is our ideal ending fund balance?
Has to be at least $1 million. I'm a little bit more comfortable with 1.1.
And what's our ideal?
That's our ideal, honestly. What you wanna have is to make sure that you have, your salaries and that sort of thing, the consistency of salaries in place. So in case anything ever happens, such as, for example, you run into a new biennium, such as this year, if they run past July and they cut us off, we have enough to operate.
I just think that with this increased ending fund and what we budgeted to begin with, our ending fund was increasing to get to that 1.1. We are essentially 10 years on an economic recovery, which puts us at increasing risk of a recession based upon history, that maybe we should be looking to be at the higher end of ideal versus the lower end of ideal in anticipation for 2 years from now, or a year from now, or 5 years from now.
Right, and it's a constant balancing act for something like that, a catastrophe, if you will, versus, okay, how many students do we got coming in? How many teachers do we need? How many paraprofessionals? How many, special education, one-on-ones do we need? So it's a fine balancing act between that, but you are correct, but then there's that balancing act to pull it back together, so, to make sure you're adequate in your buildings, now, so. It's not an easy job.
That's why we pay you the big bucks.
Yeah, I'm sure it's big.
Any other questions for Janet? All right, thanks, Janet.
Yep.
Okay, so we are at 6.4, Superintendent's Advisory Committee report.
Pleased to report that the committee has come together, and as I promised you, we would give you updates on where we are and where we need to be. Committee meeting last week, they're very productive, and of course we developed this document you see in front of you. Administrators have been assigned to be chairpersons of each particular thing and the 5 goals that we have envisioned for this district. And before we get into that, the committee agreed that the motto, the mission, and the vision still stand and are quite, good for what we see and where we want to go as far as Lake County School District 7 goes. So, there's no change in those. The goals piece, we broke out in our various committees and brought them together and produced what you see this evening. I'm going to let each administrator talk about their particular area as far as where we are, where we need to be. But that being said, kind of the next thing, this little plan of attack on this thing is, a lot of things that went into this document were generated from my listening sessions last year. So my next step in the process here is to go ahead and do another set of listening sessions. Probably will begin them right after, parent-teacher conferences and after the grading session. And we will come back together again as a committee probably in January. Once again, we will see what our progress is and where we need to be. And then we'll start, commencing into developing a plan for 2019-20. So without further ado, Susan and Lane were co-chairs on district climate and teaching and learning. I'll go ahead and turn it over to them and let them share with you what we've accomplished in those groups.
AS High School. You want to just swap back and forth with high school and elementary school so that we can ask questions?
Yeah. So the district climate, the DMS high school, we're increasing the implement of our AVID strategies. We've had 3 AVID meetings with our staff. One was in August and the 2 early release days, and right now we're working on the avid saying is wicker or wickor, depending on which generation you are. If you're first generation, it's wicker. If you're second or third generation, it's wickor. Is that right, or did I get backwards?
No, you got it
I
right, so
got
you don't
wicker.
have to say it.
Okay. And wicker is writing, inquiry, collaboration, organization, and reading skills. And so what we ask the staff to do is choose 2 of those that they would like to focus on, and then we put them into one. So we have, every staff is in either writing, collaboration, organization, or reading, right? Everybody's doing inquiry. And then we have people from our AVID team running those groups. And so we're working on, so they're just working on one. So that every student will have a teacher that's working on one of those skills throughout the year. And so instead of bombarding, trying to make a teacher work on 5 or 6 of those skills. And so hopefully we're doing well with that. And we meet at least once a month. The AVID team gets our early release Wednesday time to work on that. And I think that's where we're at on that, and I think we'll continue the PLC work and evaluate the progress on a regular basis. Try to start doing some AVID walkthroughs, when we're looking to see if the strategies are actually being used. How do we want to do that, Mrs. Warner, like that, you think?
Yep.
Perfect.
Okay, I'm on B for the elementary staff, and we also have professional learning communities that we established last year. And we're combining some of those so that the staff, this is more staff driven than it is administrative driven. The staff comes up with the PLCs that they are interested in. For example, we had some climate and culture PLCs last year that we're going to combine into a communication PLC because we have some folks that would like to pursue after school grants and also some reading and math PLCs and move towards some academic research in our PLCs looking at our math curriculum and how well it's meeting our kids' needs. But one of the hurdles that we've faced in working in PLCs over the years is the momentum and the record to keep these going. And so this year, each PLC will have a binder with the guidelines, meeting minutes, budget forms, those kinds of things, so that they have to report in a little more regularly. Previously, we reported orally through staff meetings, and I'd like a written record so that as we change staff and have turnover, those binders can be passed on to other staff. And that's kind of where we're at. We're getting going on that this year. You want me to do C, Lane?
Yeah.
Okay. C has to do with House Bill 3499, which is centered around ELL learners. We've talked a little bit about these consultants coming in. Last year we had math consultant coming in once a month. Her name is Janice Heigl to work at K through 12 with our teachers with best practices because we felt like it served our ELL learners as well. This year we're alternating back and forth. 1 month we're working on language arts and the other month would be math. So where we're at right now, we're in a little different situation because we've been working at this a little longer. Our staff has a plan and we have a very specific task each month with our consultants. With our math consultant, they've been working with Lane and Chris to develop a plan for where they want their math program to be at the end of this year and next year. So that's where LHS, DMS admin needing some time to create that vision. They're working with those consultants. They've met with them a couple times, but we're so new into the year they haven't had a lot of time to meet with them. And then tomorrow we have a consultant coming in that is helping us write a budget and develop our goals that we have to submit to ODE for this grant because this is a sizable grant. It has to be done a certain way for ODE. And we will be meeting with high school staff and elementary staff as admin to develop those goals for that $90,000 that we anticipate getting next year as well. Any questions about that?
For D.
Okay. Where we're at right now is that Fremont and Hay have PBIS assemblies every month, and we reinforce attendance and citizenship every month. But we alternate every other month doing academic achievement awards because on the off months we have role models come in with a message or some kind of a skit or some kind of a presentation for the kids. Union has done something just a little bit different. They do a student of the month assembly and they have adopted a growth mindset program which is really kind of a fun program. The kids get a t-shirt if they are the student that is chose that representing that character trait for the month. And the growth mindset program, I'd love to have them come and talk to you about it, but it's pretty complex little deal, I won't take your time tonight. We would just continue to evaluate and improve our assembly formats for our students. One of the things that is improving our format right now is that we use some box top funds that we had saved since Mr. Cahill was here, was at the elementary school for many, many years. Box tops are a dime, so that tells you how long it takes to get to $4,000. And we use $2,500 of that to put a new sound system into the ADH gym for our PE teachers, but also for our assemblies. And if you don't have any questions on D, I'll go to give Lane E.
The high school, middle school staff will increase, develop incentives in conjunction with the new administrative team to improve attendance. And I think our incentives are more of a hammer than a prize. We're working really hard with our attendance. Currently, Mr. Rose is meeting with the truancy officers, setting up attendance meetings. And I think we're just holding students and parents more accountable to increase the attendance, not so much an incentive as this is something you need to be doing and coming to. And I think we have a good support staff with juvenile probation, helping us support those parents and students that can't make those attendance. We call it regulations.
Would you like me to do that? Would you like to do that?
Isn't that that's the district office?
Be me.
Yes, can you do that one?
One thing, we feel like we need to do more here is to really recognize our employees at the district, validate them as professionals and everything else. I currently, right now, what I already do every month, payday, I take a little candy bar and whoever still has pay stubs or actual paychecks are still going out, I go to every employee in the district and, give them a little candy bar and let them know that we're thinking about them. Last SAC meeting, they said I need to go from the miniatures to full-size candy.
Full-size, please.
I noted that, so. And, I do a number of things, recognizing through.
Killing me, Smalls.
Get on board with Smalls. Train's leaving.
Through group emails and things like that, so, I think the other thing too, we need to lead into some celebrations and, have more things recognizing the good accomplishments of our schools, and that's my goal, so. So teaching and learning, back to you guys.
Teaching and learning, I think I'm the first one up there on the ELLs. There will be continued training for certified class staff and development instructional strategies and work with Title I ELL languages, especially as I think the big thing that we're doing right now is we've increased one FTE on the ELL department at the high school. And we've dedicated time for special ed staff meetings. I think we're going bi-monthly. That's the right word, 2 a month, so bi-monthly, that's the right word. And we include our paraprofessionals in some of our trainings there. And we're trying to increase teacher time during the IEP process, get more teachers to IEPs. That's quite, try to get 8 teachers to an IEP at the same time, and at the same time have honor your instructional process and find certified subs. It's quite the trick, and so we're working on that and trying to improve that process there too.
Okay, B, the communication expectations, that's been a pretty strong thing that our teachers really wanted to work on, was our communication with our teachers and being more consistent than just the Monday note going home at the elementary school. So we have our attendance up and going now for School Messenger. The high school's been doing the attendance piece of School Messenger. We're up and going with that. And our school calendars and menus are on our website, and we try and keep those calendars pretty up to date. And then next steps, November 2nd, we are meeting with all of the secretaries in the district and admin to work through the registration process and documents to improve that process for parents. We know that it's getting better, but it's not to where we want to be. We would like it to be smoother, and we would like to make it as painless as possible for our parents, get as much information as we can as early as we can, so we can make that at the beginning of the school year transition easy. We need to provide some training to our staff, to our secretaries, and to our admin and teachers to be able to develop those specialized lists we talked about with School Messenger, so that if we want to send a reminder in 4th grade that they're going on a field trip, we can do that to our parents' emails and texts. And then train and direct staff to communicate with parents through school email. We'd like to move towards that in lieu with personal cell phones and train them to send information to that back and forth in email or teachers on a more regular basis versus the personal cell.
You want to take C?
Yeah. The C is kind of a continuation of that. The mass media program for school messenger has been purchased and installed. The next steps for that is the district will be working on training all staff to use that. Do you guys have questions about the communication program or where we're headed with that? We've talked about it quite a bit. Would you like me to do D?
Sure.
Okay.
Go ahead.
You did a great job this morning.
So, we met the other day in admin and we discussed a mental health first aid program that gives our teachers some tools, especially at the high school level, to work with kids that may have thoughts about suicide or just feelings of being overwhelmed. And our teachers don't always know where to go with that and what to do with it. And then our counselors do, but they are just overwhelmed and overworked all the time. We want our teachers to be a little bit more part of that process. ACEs training is also understanding different traumas that come into our kids' lives and how that affects learning. We've had some ACEs training at different levels with our staff. And then Fremont and ADA have had this kind of goal to host an after-school program because we release at 2:30, and sometimes our kids are sitting on those buses waiting to pick up at the high school at 3, and we really feel like we can squeeze in another half hour of instructional time. So these guys got together and we used some Title I money to purchase a site license for software that increases working memory for kids in crisis, kids in poverty, which is one of the ways that their brains are affected when they're in trauma. Right now, we're serving 35% of our population in an after-school program, which we feel very good about with no additional funding, other than the site license. The teachers have all stepped up and given up time to do that. And then next steps for this professional development related to poverty and its impact on student learning, we would like to find some grants to apply for even longer after-school programs. And then we would like to schedule mental health first aid training to be scheduled for the staff at LHS DMS this year. And then after we can get that completed, move towards the lower grades. But we feel like there's a need at DHS, LHS first.
Okay, I'll take E. It was discussed, in the course of my tenure here, developing a technology plan for the district. I've already been in discussion with Mr. Reese. I think usually these plans, they're usually kind of a 5-year working document. Mr. Reese and I are going to develop a staff survey that will go out to all staff in our county school district to assess what our technology needs are and build and develop a plan based on that survey. Mr. Reese has a pretty good working knowledge of, what our inventory is, the direction we need to head as far as new and innovative technology that will benefit our students. And so that's what's in the offing for that as far as the technology programs. Mr. Reese and I we've already started discussing it. First step is we're going to develop the staff survey, probably in the form of a survey monkey that will go out to our staff. And I'd be pleased to bring something back to the board as far as what that looks like and everything. So at the end of the year, my goal, this is kind of my goal here, is to present a technology plan to you, the board. And this will go to Janet on facilities.
Well, honestly, I think a lot of this has been brought to you about every meeting, either that or at least once a month. So I feel like you guys are pretty well up to speed on our facilities. But briefly, though, I'm in contact with Cooperative Strategies. I had a phone conference with them on October 9th. They're currently working on a scope on how to go about our conclusions on that technical grant and our evaluation of the facilities. So that's kind of in limbo right at the moment. The DMS ILC main floor permit just got issued last week. My guys with the maintenance department has cleaned it out, getting it ready for Thornton to come in, and so he should start next week on on that project. And Seisman infrastructure has not yet started in the CTE, of course, revitalization. Electrical is in as far as it can be. Booths are supposed to arrive at the end of October, so we should be seeing them at any time. And then again at the end of November. We have the welders. Pacific Power has done their part of installing the boxes on the side of the building. I did hear that next Monday they're gonna put that pole in the ground. And so we must have got the green light on that permit also. And then the construction piece has been advertised for some of the odd jobs, ceilings and the walls for the
Small engine lab.
the small engines. So that, I haven't had a lot of response yet, but we'll cross that bridge next week when they're due. So for the most part, I kind of keep you guys up to date on those facilities anyway, so just a brief rundown real quick.
Okay. The first goal there under athletics and activities will be to collect demographic data for seasonal participation of our athletes in the different activities on campus. The goal for that would be to ensure that all the different subpopulations that we serve are actively participating at an equal percentage level, that we're not missing a particular group, that one group isn't being left out. And so I kind of the registrar on that and by season then collect that data and determine, compare that to our student body overall percentages and see if we're reaching our population evenly. So with the after school program, Mrs. Warner, you want to talk about the elementary by side reading?
Some teachers wanted to step up again. We have 60 or 70 kids in the working memory computer software program that I talked about. We have another 43 kids or so in a homework club in the resource rooms. And then I don't know exactly how many kids we have in this. A few teachers wanted to step up and work with some science with this book club. And then we have another 15 or so kids that go to an ELL homework club. And then we have various teachers that are keeping kids after school for enrichment activities and remedial help. And then playground improvements. I don't know what we say about that. We're excited. We're working on a vendor to build a sign for us so that we can do our playground dedication, because maintenance has our playground done and ready to go. They finished everything up and it looks great.
We'll do a ribbon cutting and we'll invite all the funders and Ms. Allen and you folks to attend that, and we're going to make a pretty big deal out of it, so we'll keep you posted on when that's going to be.
We've kind of already talked about the grant committee, but that's a PLC, essentially, professional learning community, with people to look at grant options and planning a more formal additional after-school program. We would like to include some community partners so that if kids needed to go to appointments and we had the proper releases, that kids could go to mental health appointments at 2:30 after school and those providers could come on site. We don't know what that would look like, but we would like to try and provide that, or 4-H could come and provide after-school enrichment on site at 2:30, something along those lines. But we're going to need some additional funding to do that. And then the other thing that came out of this committee was just increase awareness for scholarships for kids if they want to play sports, and their parents will allow it at the elementary level, and try and supplement those fees.
So a review of the current facilities. We are using a Google Calendar to track use of our gymnasium, even our fields to some degree, although the fields, with the space that we have, typically community groups will just contact me and make sure that we're not conflicting with any of the practice schedules that we have in place. But for the gyms, even for Union Gym, I'm tracking that so we can space things out and ensure that all of the teams have their share of time. There are a couple of community groups that are in playing basketball, for example, in the morning. We have a club volleyball team that's hoping to start and use some gym time. So I hear it gets pretty busy in the wintertime. I imagine it's probably like it was this summer when we had all the smoke and we tried to get all the teams inside the gym for practice there in August and part of September. So that's why something like this would be really important for us, just to make sure for myself that that everyone has their practice time capabilities at the different schools. And as we move into the winter season, that's something you and I can talk about, tracking ABK2 on the same calendar. Right now
We're
it's
gonna
just
talk a
outside.
lot. We're gonna be good friends, Mr. Rose, when it's
Sure.
basketball season.
Finally, she's gonna be nice to me. So that's good luck.
Well, I'm not sure about the rest of the board that isn't here, but I know that we have a majority sitting here tonight that would look very, very negatively against reducing community basketball time in the mornings.
No, wait a minute.
That's frustrating.
I've had a request already I've had a request, Mr. Gustavson, for a youth team to practice in the morning. So I guess the choice is, are you going to displace the youth or keep up with the youth?
Well, I can't keep up with the youth if I can't displace the youth.
Okay, all right, well, I just want to be clear before I go forward. Well, that's what we're
Along those lines, EBL, kind of running the game, taking over for Dustin last year, and I'll be needing to talk to you guys real soon about how that schedule, but this looks good. And use those other calendar options, because it's been a headache.
One thing that'll show too is the amount of gym time that we have outside the school day, and just kind of back up the needs for facility improvements, for example. in our
I'm hoping
gyms.
to have, just the forms for their parents to fill out with their kids ready at, conference time, so we can get an early start on it.
That'd be great, darling.
Yeah, and I'll even set up the table if you want me to, table to set up, and I'll
Nope.
be there, but some of the time takes to come off of work.
We'd love to have that set up if it
I wanted,
helps
we had
get going.
70+ kids last year just from Lakeview, and, we pays the team, so the more we can get, the better.
Okay.
Although gym space is tight. Long, that's good.
But we didn't, and I'm not sure on this one, but didn't feel like there was a policy written, a board policy written to determine the priority of those needs. So for example, if there were a community group that had filled out the community, or the facility use request form, had gone through the proper channels, was using, for example, the gym, but then we had a school club team or something from the elementary that wanted to use the gym, and there were a conflict, then would that take priority? So that's a question that we may need to address, and what do we do in that situation? Do we bump the adults and say, well, we really want to serve our children first, even though they're not, this isn't necessarily a school program, but it's a community
Oh,
program?
Yeah, Marcel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the next one, professional development opportunities. This is something that Mr. Cahill had mentioned to me. Let's see, early on, it had mentioned proactive coaching as one of the different coaching PD providers. And I contacted them in August, and I was really surprised by the cost and the travel that we needed to pay for, even some of the lodging. And so I held back because, to be honest, I didn't know what my coaches needed this year. We've had a little bit of turnover, and I'm getting to know my coaches. And so with that comes conversations with them, meetings here coming up now at the end of this fall season, say, hey, what do you think you need to work on? This is what I see. And so based on the input that I gather this year, I'll be making some decisions on coaching professional development. Let's see, second to last is the intramural program for 7th and 8th. This is something that I've seen performed, but the schedule that we had on campus for teaching really lent itself to that type of program. I'm looking for ideas as how to implement this because all of our teachers teach a full schedule. They have one prep period, and it would almost need to be as if it were a teaching period, to have planning time for that, some prep time before lunch, some cleanup time after lunch. So it's going to be a challenge to try to work that in. I don't know if that would mean community volunteer or what, but take some time to try to figure something out for the middle school kids. Mr. Schatt and I have talked a little bit about the outdoor area there where the middle schoolers have their lunch and play outside, and what kind of improvements we can do for that. And the last one, the idea behind this one, I gather, because we had some doubts as we met about this, and isn't necessarily to gather parent input to evaluate coaches as much as it is, what programs do you feel like you could add, or where do you feel like the schools were lacking in terms of activities offered, clubs offered, athletics, you know, we really do offer a lot. I mean, coming up pretty soon here, we're gonna start the equestrian team, the ski club, and things like that. But, you know, to get some parent input, you know, what have you seen done? Would you be willing to help out? What is it that's a particular club, for example, or activity you might think that the kids can benefit from?
I might have one comment on that.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that always seems interesting is we have a ski team, I think we do have an equestrian team. And I think there's some cheer is out there. They're,
All clubs.
Golf.
you know, we call them the Lakeview High School ski team, or Lakeview High School equestrian team, but it is a club. And, you know, I think it's just, I think of cheer a lot, not that I want to be cheer or ever could do a cheer, but, you know, I look at all the football games that I go to outside, and basketball games outside of Lakeview, and we have a great attendance, but quite frankly, we are a lousy cheer group of parents on the sidelines, and we are very quiet. And even though that is, you know, it's definitely school show associated, but it is extracurricular, so how do we get that involved? I mean, it's kind of, you can't have a cheer program without sports very well. So they just kind of go hand in hand. So how do you make the club versus the school kind of hand in hand in something like that? In a traveling status.
Okay, so you're asking me how we can develop that into more of that
I think,
actual high school program?
I'm not sure that I'm looking for an answer
Okay,
today.
okay.
I'm just voicing my opinion about some of the nuances with these high school sports that are clubs.
I know one reason this year, our cheer advisor is one of our new teachers, and we had a volunteer with her, and so they didn't get started really till the second week of school or so. And typically, cheer practices through the summer, and, you know, they're able to build those skills and be ready for the season, and so that's one of the reasons why they didn't go official and we're a club. And they don't practice, they're not an everyday practice team either, with everything that's going on, so.
Was that a
But both
paid,
coaches.
was that a paid position in the past?
In the past, I don't know,
No.
Volunteer.
Volunteer.
so it might need to be.
But it used to be a school program, wasn't it?
Back in the
Remember?
day.
Long past.
Years and years ago, we went a lot of years where we didn't have any cheer program, and I think we had a parent, I think we're now in year 4 with it. A parent resurrected it and brought it back, and it's been a volunteer thing ever since.
So it's been, so then I would say it'd only be like a 4-year where there wasn't one.
And did we have it your last years
Yes.
you were here?
Yeah, we have
I couldn't quite remember if it was here or not.
But I can't remember if they went into the winter sports or not, but we definitely had a football squad.
I guess overall, I'd just say that we have a lot of interest in the community for other than our standard, you know, 3-season sports.
Right.
And we've done a very good job, community's done a very good job of maintaining those. But there's some things that it's just gonna be a good conversation. I think it's timely to have that conversation on what really should be left at the club level versus the school level.
I just had a question, as far as the clubs go, do they pay the school fee, or are they completely separate?
Well, like ski team doesn't ever use the school, I don't
But,
think.
so they don't pay to
They'll
play?
pay to pay to play?
I mean, we could use
If they
the
do
football
pay to
field
play,
in the rest of the season for the
Pay
equestrian
to
team.
play. It
Well, I
stays in
think
their
they
trustee
used to
account.
back in the days, so that was my question. I mean, back when it was a school sport and it,
Sure.
right, they paid it, so, but that's what makes us separate with the club, is they're not paying into the school for anything.
I can't answer that, but if they are staying at the ASB level,
I don't
where,
think they are.
where they, you know,
Equestrian too, I mean, we're not.
yeah, I'm not sure if they're paying in or not, because it would stay there.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they're not doing a pay to play like in football or basketball, but I'll double check.
I don't think we do.
I was just curious, you know, that's a definite line too, when they start talking about.
The cheer, for example, they had to purchase shoes, they had to purchase bows and some clothing items, so those aren't things that we've provided for them, for example. So they've done some fundraising in the past, they had some left over, so we're kind of hoping Booster will help them with that too next year.
You don't have the uniforms from 20 years ago? Oh
Right.
my God.
There's some around.
Well,
Go to the
unfortunately,
basement of the DMS.
uniforms they had, but like sweats, for example.
That wasn't that subtle,
Jackets.
Candy.
No, it really wasn't.
Some of the uniforms are old and they're inappropriately sized.
Good job. Embarrassing. Good.
I might need somewhere to stay in.
Candy, did you pull yours out?
So anyway,
Candy?
You have a new
Yeah, I did
closet
actually
in
the
the
other day. It
closet,
was
I
here you go.
guess. You know, this whole, I don't wanna, I know there's more left in here, but I kinda took it over for a moment. I guess I'm just pretty excited about every bit of this, and especially the athletics. Not to say that not about the rest of it, but it's just, it's a timely time. It's timely that we are having an in-depth view at what we're offering at all levels. And I'm excited about the energy that it seems like you all have about everything that we're producing.
Okay, Lonnie, your turn.
So, my committee is community relations, and so the first goal is our continued support in the medical community with Lake County for our health occupations program. So, Mrs. Stenninger's program still maintains an excellent relationship with the hospital. There's still the kids are still wanting to take those classes, and that's just a great relationship we have there. Thunder Ranch, and then I think that there was some training from some hospital staff as well, has completed at the end of last year, and then they finished up with Fremont Hay and Union this year, the Stop the Bleed program, the tourniquet. So they did a training on that with our staff. So mental health continues to provide some services in our schools, and then, you know, quite a bit out in the community. Where we're at is, so our district, so Will and I started having conversations with Lake Health District Hospital about we really need some nursing support in the school district, and then we brought the admin team on board with us, and so the conversation started with, you know, how can we get that training for the medication that is brought into our schools, how do we dispose of that, train our staff on documentation, how things need to be labeled. And we did that last year with, Judy Clark came in and did that for the school, but how do we do that with the district hospital with their part, now that they've taken over public health? We also have some students with diabetic needs, and so our staff needs trained in testing and insulin. We have also done that prior, but we really feel as a district we need to have a school nurse available to us. Not on a full-time basis, but just for specific things. If teachers and coaches are traveling and they have kids or students with specific needs, then they're gonna need to know how do they handle that on the bus, or if they're doing overnight trips. And so those conversations, we're looking at an agency-to-agency agreement, and so it's just still in the working process, but we'll bring it back to you guys as it moves forward. Then the next goal is our CTA curriculum, and where we are with the advisory committees. The ag shop and the shop, so both of the buildings, the CTE teachers have met regularly with their local advisory committees, and they've sought direction for their program for the school year. They will continue to meet throughout the year to get information from, you know, and support from their committees, and then they also are gonna look at the new state funding for Measure 98 and the CTE revitalization grant.
I know a piece of that I will contribute that we should have put in, but we didn't. You know, part of the CT revitalization grant is a student mentoring program, and we've been brought in the USD as a partner on that, because Leanne Davis is the mentoring coordinator, and we're adding another hat to her head. She's going to be the CT mentor coordinator too. I'll let Lane and Chris talk about it a little bit, but we're kind of pretty excited about the program. We're trying to identify, you know, business partners out there to have students go and do job shadows. And the thing that since I've been doing the CT thing, I hear over and over and over again, is the fact that our labor force is very, very depleted. They're having a very difficult time trying to find people to hire. And we're kind of going into this with the notion of, preparing these kids and getting them acquainted with our local industries, with the hope of eventually, through that mentorship and maybe possibly leading to a work experience placement. And we're looking down the road to see if we can eventually maybe do an apprenticeship program that we can grow our own type of community employment situation. So, Wayne, you have anything down on that?
No, I think, I've talked to 3 business members in my, what do you call that, the mashed potato circle?
Rotary.
Yeah.
Rotary today.
Rotary and Super Optimists, and they're super excited about this, so I think, we have a handful of businesses that said yes, and I think it's gonna be neat to build that workforce that is missing. There's nothing more aggravating than do a $100 call fee on an appliance guy because you have to dump from Klamath Falls or from Ben. And that's just one of them. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know who you call.
I call Google. But I think I spent the afternoon with a mechanic, and he goes, "We're screaming for help." So I know that's huge, the Elks Lodge is screaming for a cook to help. So I think if we can I've talked to all my CTE teachers on this thing. It's gonna be a cool run. I think we have just one big hurdle, and that's that workforce insurance piece. And how can they have a kid come in and shadow and still be covered under that liability? But we'll work around it. We'll get there.
I think it'll build interest too in our educational programs that we're offering. Once this is established and kids can see the success that some of the other classmates have had, maybe after a couple of years, some of the jobs they've been able to move into with this training that they've gathered. I think that'll increase interest too and excitement about the possibilities of moving into that bookend plan.
Why don't you slow your thunder?
That's okay, thank you. And then number C is the district webpage and Facebook page for the district to inform parents. The district webpage is up, and the schools each have their own webpage as well. And then the calendars, great positive input back on the calendars, and they're more user-friendly this year and very appreciated by the community. That was a big issue last year, that they were just harder to see with the sports and stuff, and communities loving our calendars. As for the Facebook, we're working on that, and I'm not sure where that's at, Mr. Cahill.
Well, once again, that's a Will and Evan conversation. So
Okay. Maybe move that to technology?
But we will get something out.
Okay.
I promise.
And then, School Messenger is gonna be a great program to have once, admin and, our staff, our secretarial staff is trained to send out announcements to those specific groups, parents, coach notifications, emergency notifications. And then, D is our, relationship with the local paper, and, we've had great coverage with our board meetings, athletics, school events, etc. So we just wanna continue that great relationship with Mike Acosta and Todd Flynn. Thank you.
Kudos to you.
Improve communication from the school via newsletters. Right now, and then have those newsletters either sent home or posted on the websites. And so we're not there yet, but we're working towards that, and conversations are being had around those newsletters. And I think that we're gonna look at having those on the websites and the submission of assignments, and then maybe some hard copies as well, so. And then community groups, we wanna continue, we have a lot of community groups that do community service. So today, we're working with community service when it comes to our partnership with the Forest Service, BLM, our medical community, LCRI, Watershed Council, OSU, the Food Corps, and others. We have a lot of leadership groups, so we have our Honor Society, we have our FFA, we have our Student Council, and so how do we implement those groups? And they're doing a lot of things already. So I know that FFA just finished a community can drive. Honor Society works on different projects of beautification on the campus, as well as looking at maybe some opportunities for our students to volunteer so that they can work towards their honors diploma. So that's all I have. Do you guys have any questions?
Quick plug for FFA, and I notified the board of this today, that they're currently back at the National Convention in Indianapolis right now, and we learned last night that President Trump is going to come and speak to them on Saturday.
Wow.
So
That's awesome.
that's pretty amazing. I believe the last
I've heard
president of the
that
United
before.
States to speak there was Jimmy Carter in like 1977 or 78.
Wow.
As an FFA member myself, I got to see President Ford way back when, I won't say how far
We're
back.
watching Red Birch right now.
And I also,
are they?
I got to see George H.W. Bush, but my son, the vice president, not the president, so it's pretty exciting stuff. So, I look forward to having them give you a report on the 14th. And that is where we are today on our district roads. So, do you have any questions?
Questions, comments, well, probably didn't surprise you, I have a couple thoughts. One, thank you very much, like I said earlier, I think there's been a lot of thought and work that has gone into this. Pretty exciting, actually. I made just a couple notes that came to mind through here, and I won't say that they need to be in here, I'd just say it might be something worth considering, as this, I look at this as probably somewhat of a working document that continues to evolve as issues change around us. A couple easy ones are like the reader board for community relations. Still think I've been saying it for years, think we need to figure out something different with that.
Are you talking about the
Up the
firehouse?
Is that where it is? I've never seen it.
So it's funny, because when I came here, I think it was either an interview or whatever, I told Will, I go, I've always wanted to put a reader board, like, talk to, who owns Burger Queen, samples. And I said, man, I bet you I could make him, work him out a great deal, put one up, and Will goes, there is one. I'm like, oh, but I agree with you on that. There's gotta be a different location, or move it out so it's more visible,
Yeah,
something.
that is something we need to address.
The other thing that comes to mind is like
I hate
lawns.
to bring it to you guys, but that's currently covered by an MOU between the town of Lakeview and so that's a long-term agreement, so the current placement, you'd have to do a second one if you were looking at doing something like that.
And I think
How
there's
long?
3 partners in on that too. Don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure
It's
there's
pretty
3
much
partners.
indefinite because of the different grants and stuff that went into it, so I was involved in drafting it, so that's why we're kinda locked in.
Can we move it?
I don't think so, because of how the
It's part
grant.
of the MOU.
Mm-hmm.
Did we pay for it at all?
It was a kind of a community deal.
All grant.
There was several funds from different sources.
Yeah.
That's
second.
That's kind of a problem, sorry.
Yeah, no, that's exactly correct.
So that's why it has the snow report on it.
Yeah, but the high school has, the school has first dibs on the messaging on it, that was part of the deal. So,
I guess the point is that I don't know that messaging really matters on it. It's just in an awful spot to see it.
Absolutely.
And no matter what the message is, you don't naturally look there
Coming
to
around
see
the
it.
corner and you
Mhm.
drive by.
And so, either we indefinitely have a wonderful reader board that nobody sees, or we figure out a solution, whether that's 5 years or 10 years, somehow get it to where it's actually accomplishing its purpose,
or a second one would be an option too.
somehow.
Exactly.
If they aren't willing to move it.
The next item that came to mind as we went through that is under community relations, maybe is law enforcement. How do we get law enforcement into our buildings in a non-enforcing role?
Actually, we should have given ourselves credit for that, because the law enforcement has talked to me about a program, have lunch with a cop. And I had a meeting with law enforcement administrators and I about 2 weeks ago, and that was one of the conversations. So I think we are going to go ahead and get that program going. Probably gonna have another, we're gonna try to meet with law enforcement about every 2 months, so we'll have another meeting again, see if we can get that off the ground.
I think that should be included in there. it's important. We need to figure out how to get that stigma away from the.
Yeah,
There was a police officer in my building this week, and tells you that I'm pretty busy, and maybe one of you can help me out. But I know he was presenting in a class, a couple classes, I just don't know which one or what he's doing, but he was definitely there on a
You weren't hiding
enforcement.
from him.
I wasn't hiding from him, no, I didn't see him go out the other door. But, so we do have some opportunities where we are using them as best we can, and we're trying to set up a, like this on this, is it Measure 11? What's Measure 11 crime? We are trying to set up a Measure 11 crime presentation in Mrs. Robinson's health classes for our students. So we do have some stuff in the works, it's just, I think some turnover in both buildings, both agencies has put some stuff on hold or on back burners.
I think it's definitely starting to increase from where we were a couple of years ago, and after some of the conversations we've had in the last year, I think it's just an important piece that we can't lose sight of. This seems like a very good document to have that.
And yeah, I'll add that in there, and it is a pretty good document. And I've been having some wonderful conversations with Sheriff Taylor and also Sergeant Hill. I think we're getting a real good working partnership going. I think the PR part is critical, like you said, and we need to get the PR piece into it too, between the law agencies and our schools. So the have a lunch and a cop thing, love the idea. Daniel Tagg is the one who is kind of behind that, and we're working with Daniel Tagg as far as getting that going, getting something up and going on that.
I just wanted to tag onto that, if any parents as well, in the starting process of it, you know, there's the police car at the school and then it.
Yeah,
So
we
our
hope-
whole
I hope that we can at
Facebook
least-
or emails,
Yeah,
hey, what
last
happened
year, whenever
today?
that would happen, I'd hit Facebook pretty fast and get the news out.
I'm
I
just
think
saying
that-
if we started regularly,
Yeah,
it would be
the
nice.
The school messenger thing too, once we get that up and running, the school messenger thing will put out a blanket email or text to parents to let them know what's going on. This is a police car down there, but we're having a drill. Nobody's under arrest, we're not under threat.
They're coming for lunch, they're
So
presenting in a
on and
couple
so forth,
classrooms, or, you know.
I
just
think
that
too,
kind of-
right, what's Ryan Tegg's title at the ESD?
Threat assessment coordinator.
And so he's been very helpful and supportive, and he provides our staff with education. He's a good, just run things by him, and so he's always available, even though, he's there like on Tuesdays, but we can reach him throughout the week as well. So he's been a really good resource that the ESD has provided too. So I'll add that to community.
Yeah, we'll get that,
Okay.
we'll definitely get that in there, that's good for
Something else you guys might want to publicize too is just Mike Patterson is going to be becoming the new youth investment person, and he is great with kids. And that program, over the last, I think, 15 or 20 years, has kept down any juvenile crime filings, I think, by about over 50%, 50-60%. So it might be something, and that's usually an intervention service to keep the kid from ever ending up in the juvenile justice system. So it's, as somebody that does defense work, I have seen all kinds, and even kids that do get in some minor amounts of trouble, pick up their first MIP, something like that, they do a really good job of getting involved with those services and really getting it out there. And I think a lot of parents, it's almost like the mentor program, it's one of our best kept secrets that shouldn't be a secret. It's something that should be, more people should be aware of and reaching out to, because it's been pretty powerful and really heading off some antisocial behavior that can turn into some serious problems, because it seems like once a kid hits 15, they do the wrong thing, the school year part breaks a kid's nose, there's technically Measure 11 charges on the table at that point. So, and then they're in the adult system, and not a good progression. None of us like seeing anybody there. So that's another resource that probably should be a little more publicized that we're already doing. And the school's got a great partnership with that.
And so lastly, I have one more thought, and I'll make it quick, but I think this actually fits into very many of the categories that you have here. When we adopted the last calendar for the school year, we had some discussion about having a comprehensive kind of review of our calendar, starting dates, ending dates, is 5-day week adequate versus 4-day week. Professional development was a part of that because of the early release. It was just a whole gamut of our calendar system, and I think that plays into athletics, it plays into staff development, plays into the community, basically every bit of this entire document. And just something of other interest that I just read here lately is the Bend Levine School District had a study done where they found that start times for, I think it was junior high and high school, this next year, flipping it from, so the high school will start later and the elementary will start earlier based upon some studies that they've had done or part of or looked into or whatever. I don't know what their involvement is, but it was a pretty significant change for them. But then that again, you know, start times and end times in a day affects athletics. It affects every bit of what we do as an entity. So I'm not saying that there is a solution out there. I think it's just that that's one thing that we talked about that could maybe be incorporated in this from the standpoint of where are we with the kind of comprehensive review of our entire bell. And we also talked about bell schedules because a lot of the athletes missed 7th period because of our travel times or 6th and 7th period. And we talked about flipping the bell schedule every week or whatever, or just to limit that some. So that would be my only other suggestion, is something to add into the document.
Okay, appreciate that. And that's that. Let the department report that.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Okay, so next I have old business.
And then, Mr. Chair.
Okay, and we're on to new business. And we have 8.1 2020 World Stride Senior European Field Trip. There's no National Lampoons in there. That's good.
It's like old new business inside this.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where you assume everybody knows what's going on, and you guys changed the board meeting time, and I just thought all my staff knew. And Ms. Young showed up last board meeting at 7 to do the presentation, so I apologize on that part, but she's here today to talk to you guys about it.
We're gonna give her credit for the show up anyway, it's the last meeting.
Yeah.
So.
You're right at 7 tonight.
Perfect, I would've been on time. Okay, so the original one I sent you was a World Strides, which is the same program I use for DC. But after some more research and talking to other companies, I decided to go with EF, which is Education First. I did a lot of time on the phone comparing, contrasting, and the differences are so small that the experience on this trip I think is worth it. So with World Strides, it was more regional, like Southern Europe or the Isles or Central Europe, where this one's going to take us right through Italy, Switzerland, France, and into London. And it's around the same price, so it's going to be around, I believe, like 3,900, I think, 11 days. So another good thing about that compared to DC is we fly overnight, so we'll be able to take a bus day of. Parents don't have to bring their kids and spend a night and then drop off the airport. And we'll also be able to take a bus directly home. Some of the highlights on here are Venice. Venice alone is a highlight. City on Water, which is sinking, so go see it while you can. And we have a tour guide that will stay with us from when we get picked up from the airport all the way till the end. And will be a certified translated tour guide, also speaking all the languages in every country that we travel through. I really like this tour because it brings in architecture and culture and food and even the natural environment. So Swiss Alps, we'll be able to see Lake Como and take a ride on the lake there. All the traveling is taken care of, the hotels, dinner, and breakfast. The difference is they don't include lunch with this program, and so I think that's a small price to pay to be able to go to all parts of Europe instead of one region. They have the same safety that World Strides does, except night chaperones, but I have it covered. I have ideas to make sure the kids stay in the room. Probably will be getting so exhausted that they stay anyways. So that's one where I was like, oh, I don't know if I'm going to go that way, but that tour guide's with us the whole time, and I'm taking a smaller group, and so we'll put I'm going to work with admin team to make sure we have clear expectations before we head out, so I think that won't be as much of a problem. They include a money back guarantee if you have to cancel for unknown reasons, which is great because World Strides charges you an extra to do that. And they have a tour service on call, they have offices in every place that we're going to visit in case of emergency, and emergency insurance as well in case that there's lost baggage or an incident or anything like that. And have you guys had a chance to look at the full itinerary? So, see the Eiffel Tower in Paris, Swiss Alps, and then we go to London, see Big Ben, the London Bridge, and then we would fly home on the 11th day.
When was it, the trip?
So, the week before spring break and the week of spring break. I try not to conflict with things, I know that it's a big one for baseball, but there's lots of stuff going on, and I figured less instructional time would be missed the week before spring break because everything's winding down, whereas the week after spring break, everything's kicking back up into gear. So, that is the goal for that, and the goal is to get back on a Friday or Saturday, so that kids have one day to kind of try and recoup from the time change.
And what grades?
It would be just seniors, so they would sign up tomorrow, actually, if you guys approve it, and start payments, and then they would go their senior year. And they would break down the payments into smaller, like, chunks, and then pay it. And then, this one is one free teacher for every 6 kids, so the ratio is smaller. And I put a max at 12 and a waiting list after, because I don't want to end up with 15 kids and not another teacher for 18. So if for some reason I get 18, I don't mind as long as I have another staff member that could go. But my ultimate would be just 12 and 2 adult chaperones to go with them.
So what if the seniors decided to take their class money and make a senior trip?
I don't think they
You
would.
have a long ways to go, I can
Yeah.
tell you that.
I had talked to them before this, because they were throwing the idea around, and I said that they either need to talk to administration and the board and their student council teacher and completely change everything, or they can just go along with life as usual, and if they want to go on this trip, they can. And so I think they thought that the latter was a better choice.
Is this next spring break, or is this
No.
juniors signing up for their
Juniors.
seniors? Okay,
Yeah.
year and a half out.
And it mainly came because so many parents asked me about it and kids asked me about it. And so I started doing research. And once I found out that it was 1-to-6 ratio, I was a lot more happy to do it just because that ratio was smaller and I felt like it was more reasonable to get that amount of kids to go.
I think it's a great deal. A few years ago, when I was a junior in high school, I went on a math trip for 3 weeks in Europe, and it was pretty awesome.
We need a chaperone.
Great
It was
teacher.
highlight.
And parents could pay to go too, and like usual, we would just get them board approved by you guys and follow that same process.
Chalice. So did I make this wrong? It's not World Strides, you're eliminating World Strides and you're using EF.
Yeah, do I need to send you a new memo? Will that help?
No, well, no,
We just have to vote.
we just need
differently.
to, yeah,
Change it in there? Yeah.
amend the motion, please.
Any other questions for Shelley?
It's just if we need any chaperones, we can mention them. As well as the Florida trip.
Nobody wanted Florida.
Man.
Go big or go home, I guess they want Europe.
Spending your time in Ireland?
Picky kids. Not this time, no. There wasn't any,
No.
there wasn't any good, well-rounded ones with Europe. It was like, for Ireland, it was Ireland or nothing.
I agree with that statement.
You're biased.
They were going 2020, I hear, right?
Yeah, we're gonna go to 2020. Yeah.
Is it, no, not
No,
2020?
2022.
2022.
Yep.
Darwin? So I guess I will entertain a motion.
I move to approve the 2020 EF Senior European Field Trip as presented.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion is approved. Guess you're going to Europe.
Great. I think I'm excited. Or nervous. Thank you guys.
Thank
Have
you.
a good evening.
Thanks, Chalice.
All right, we are down to 9, consent agenda. Just remind everybody that we did have 9.6 added, which is the letter on the table.
I move that we approve the consent agenda with the amendment of 9.6 added.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded, all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion's approved. 10, announcements.
I have none, Mr. Chair.
11, next board meeting agenda item.
We'll have all the building reports, we'll have a report from FFA and the time being, that's all I'll have.
When is our next board meeting?
November 14th.
Well,
Executive session.
And we'll have an executive session 14th as well.
We should have a report on our state championship bound football team.
That'd be nice.
Can we do another elementary presentation as well?
Gonna put some
Girls
pressure
soccer
on
team,
them,
There's
right?
one there.
cross country running.
So hopefully our other two members,
Yeah.
I won't be.
Most definitely, yeah.
I'll be using-
Oh, I won't be here the 14th.
I'll be here, and I was wondering, we skipped last year at Union. We used to go out to Union once a year. Do we want to bring that back?
I will leave that up to you, the board. What is your what desire?
We thought, feelings.
We
We used to
certainly
go
do.
once a year. We used to go the only meeting in December.
Yes, we did skip the last
We
year.
might not wanna go out there the 14th if we have two board members gone.
well, in executive session regarding.
Oh, and we've got executive session, so you might wait till,
I asked the teachers about it, and they would prefer to do it in the spring so that they can take you out to the greenhouse and show you things that they're growing out there, if that sways you at all.
Spring it is.
That's fine, that's fine. I just don't want them to feel forgotten about. We used to.
No, we'll be pleased to accommodate them, and we'll do, per Mrs. Moore's recommendation, we'll hit the spring and put all the garden stuff.
So we're not gonna have a financial report or a facilities report or.
Oh my God, let's do another facilities report.
Is there anything else this can report on next meeting?
Oh, let me tell ya. I will stack it
We
up.
are down to number 12.
Move that we adjourn the meeting.
Holt McGill.
I second.
Then move to second, to adjourn the meeting, all those in favor?
Aye.